SECfans.com. We're going to do a quick hitter this time, not a long discussion for Georgia, Tennessee. Basically, Georgia good, Tennessee bad. But we did want to take an opportunity to just run the model and show you what it said because Tennessee, Georgia is still a big game. We felt bad about not doing Tennessee, Florida last week, although we did run that model and talk about it in our live show. If you want to hear a long SEC rundown and maybe a little bit of general college football discussion, we did a 2-hour live show last week. The production value is terrible. It was our first live show. We ran into a lot of technical issues, but there was some great discussion, some great questions from you guys. So just a real quick summary of where we're at right now. We're not loving what we see from Tennessee. Georgia, you're an elite team. What can I say? We're going to keep pissing y'all off because we're going to keep being critical and finding ways to pick you apart because we do every elite team. Ohio State gets the same treatment from us. So does Alabama fans. All their fans hate us anyway. So we're just going to have Josh run through the model real quick, share his observations on this one, and that's pretty much it. But we wanted to give you all an opportunity to see what the model said this week. So Josh, why don't you take it away?
I think the main takeaway, looking at the statistical stuff from the model, is Georgia, and it was kind of our prediction going into the Missouri game, Georgia's a little more suspect in run defense than maybe had been appreciated. And I know we definitely took some heat last week for saying the Georgia-Missouri game might be closer than anticipated. And, we had that game as, we don't take things from a betting perspective. We take it from a predictive perspective. We're really just trying to tell you what are the storylines going into the game in terms of what do we think is going to be effective, ineffective, what's going to kind of determine the outcome, what's going to work. I can't predict how many punts are going to be blocked, how many times a guy's going to fumble, other than if there's a good pattern involved. That's not what we're looking to do, and that's not anything anybody can do. We're just trying to tell you kind of how the way it flows. Our statement in the Missouri game was that we thought that game would be a lot closer than anticipated because essentially Missouri was a lot better at stopping the run than people had given them credit for, and they were a lot better at running the ball than people had given them credit for. And we predicted that Missouri would probably outgain Georgia on the ground in a yard per play sense. They would have a higher yard per carry average than Georgia did. I'm going to note that proved true. Missouri ran the ball for 4.6 yards per carry. Georgia ran it for 4.6 yards per carry, getting a little bit of an edge late in the game. Holyfield was successful. DeAndre Swift was not as successful for 6.4 yards per carry to 4.4. Crockett outrushed Swift in that game. Again, in a yard per carry sense. And between Crockett and Beatty, really Missouri was just as or more successful than Georgia was on the ground. The deciding factor in that game, and it was the other thing that we flagged, was that Missouri's pass defense is horrid, giving up 122% of opponent passing averages. Jake Fromm had I thought, kind of a really off game, and I don't mean that as a criticism long-term for Fromm. I just don't think it was his best game, and he played a little bit below his standard, and he still threw for over 11 yards per attempt. But again, only 13 of 23 passing. If that number was higher, this game could have been a blowout a lot sooner. But as it was, I think the line, we had it at 14 when we were trying to pick it, in terms of our evaluation on the model, so it ended up being a push. On our pick, yes or no, but it ended up moving to 14.5. So if we had the later line, we would have picked, quote, right. Point being, essentially, in a boiler, and pack it down to a single kernel. Georgia's rush defense isn't as good as probably people might think. Their rush offense isn't probably as good. Still very good, but not quite elite enough to win against a top 5 team at this point. They are young. They will get better. All the pieces are young. They will get better. The Missouri game was kind of what we thought it would be. And again, sort of, mashed with our expectations. And I had the game 41. I'm just going to go ahead and toot my own horn. I had that 41-31, Georgia over Missouri. I had a lot of comments where people thought Josh was crazy for saying 41-31. I was off 4 total points from the actual score of the game. So I think we had that one pretty well nailed down.
I do think if you're going to talk, though, about all these, if you're going to pick them apart a little bit, and that's fair, I came away pretty impressed with the Georgia pass defense in that game. That's my only addition to this. You can continue.
Yeah, well, and I think that's fair. And the pass defense, again, it really was, the story of the game was not the run game, which a lot of people would have assumed they're just going to run over Missouri, which I felt like wasn't true based off Missouri's revamped defensive line. It was not true. It was the fact that Georgia gave up 4.6 yards per attempt and had 11 yards per attempt. That's why Georgia won the game. Despite all the quirky things, Missouri still had a shot, basically because they could run the ball. But Locke was actually not very effective. And I know your opinion is that he's kind of a system guy, benefiting a lot from that. And at this point, I would tend to agree with it. When he's played better teams, they've certainly fallen off. Anyway, long-winded discussion from Georgia before I got into the model here, because the flip side of this is that Tennessee's not playing very good football right now. If you look at the model, Tennessee's rush defense holding teams to 92% of opponent averages, Georgia 91% of opponent averages. Those numbers actually aren't that different. Tennessee's rush defense has not been terrible. Against Florida, they gave up 5.9 yards per carry. A little hard to judge Florida. We had this discussion in the Kentucky game. I think a lot of Florida is probably being judged unfairly. I think the truth is that Kentucky's actually probably a really good team. We'll find out this week against South Carolina. My suspicions are actually better than South Carolina. But the real problem here, one, Georgia's pass defense, pretty darn good. 77% of opponent passing averages allowed. It's really a borderline elite. 91% of rush, again, not necessarily so great, but Tennessee giving up 108% of opponent passing averages is pretty darn bad. And for a Power 5 team, it's pretty terrible. And how does that pan out? Again, despite the fact that Georgia is a run-first team, Tennessee is much worse. Tennessee is over 2-to-1 run to pass, which is really predominantly run, and that's kind of interesting given the fact that they pass for 8 yards per attempt. Some of that is a byproduct that Garantano is not asked to throw a lot. Some of it is just kind of the way they fall. But regardless, 4 yards per carry for Tennessee, respectable actually. 6 yards per attempt, but again, not throwing the ball very much. Comes out to about 4.7 yards per play. That's enough for Tennessee to move the football, and not probably to be completely shut down in this game, but definitely not enough to win. Georgia's side, 5.8 yards per carry means the running game is effective. 11.8 yards per attempt, though, means that Georgia's expected to be able to throw the ball all over Tennessee if they choose to do so. I don't think that's surprising. Felipe Franks only threw 18 passes in the Florida game. Felipe Franks is not a very good quarterback this year, and they're going to have to figure something out there. I think that's kind of been the big surprise. But he still had 9.6 yards per, and that's probably not a good sign. So, overall, the upshot of it is 8.3 yards per play for Georgia, 4.7 yards per play for Tennessee. Tennessee is moving the ball well enough to win a game against a team. They ain't moving the ball well enough to outscore a team predicted to get 48 points. So the model here is predicting 48-17. Essentially, Georgia runs the ball pretty well, throws the ball whenever the heck they want to. Tennessee moves the ball enough to score, but they're going to get outpaced pretty quickly. That's the model's prediction.
All right, go ahead and real quick give us your score.
I think this is probably pretty fair. I think 48-17 is not a bad score. Honestly, I'm just going to stick with the model score and say 48-17. We're really just predicting basically once they hit the fourth quarter, Georgia should have enough of a margin to kind of name their score. It depends on how much they want to run it up. Kirby Smart has not ran up ball games. He kind of comes from the Saban mold that he doesn't score unnecessarily at the end of games. I don't think they cross too much from that 48-17 threshold. I guess I'll go 51-17 just to be different.
All right, I'm going to go 45-10. Generally, you see like a backdoor cover, last drive touchdown. We even saw a late touchdown from A&M against Alabama this week, and almost saw another when Nick Starkel went in. I don't think Georgia allows that. I think they really are going to start taking pride in developing these second-level players. And this is something we've also seen from the Saban mold. So 45-10 for me, and you said 51 what?
51-17. Just a shot in the dark, man.
Anything else on this one?
No, it is what it is. And I think the one curiosity to me is we were really critical of Garantano last year when he came in. And we were critical because, Tennessee, loses to Georgia. They're completely ineffective at the quarterback situation. They trade off for Garantano. They lose an ugly as heck game against South Carolina, and they just look bad the rest of the season. I don't know that the quarterback change to Garantano was in any way successful. I expected they'd probably make the change to Christ, and that hasn't stuck. So Until Tennessee gets the quarterback situation solved, nothing's going to work. And yeah, there's not a lot of answers right now for Tennessee because they just don't have talent.
All right, y'all. It was a quick one. Sorry, not a lot to talk about in this one, but at least we got the model out for you. Remember, Georgia fans, Tennessee fans, give us your score predictions. If you like what we're doing, give us a like. If you love it, give us a subscribe. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. God bless.